Hello everyone and welcome back to My Hero Academia Podfics. Today I'll be starting a new series for the fic If We're Being Honest. I really like this one a lot. The summary is Class 1A is hit by a very powerful truth quirk and lots of things come out. Some things are quite harmless, quite the opposite really. Others are quite funny and some open wounds that never really healed. Chapter 1. Hit by a very inconvenient quirk. So you're saying this will last a whole month? Uraraka exclaimed. As far as the quirk specialists are saying, yes. Aizawa said tiredly. The light from the windows cast a shadow over his face that made him look almost like a ghost. The child that caused this doesn't have a very good handle on their quirk, and it's a powerful one. A month is the least amount of time it will last. It's lucky this was the only class affected. So we'll just blurt out random things, Mina asked, like the fact that I can't eat sandwiches not cut down the middle. Snickers rose from the class as she turned a bright red. Aizawa sighed. Not exactly. The quirk is a mix between a truth quirk and a prone-to-suggestion quirk. Thanks to the boy's parents, it means that you'll be under the effects of a normal truth quirk, but you also won't have the ability to keep yourselves from oversharing. So we'll all be spouting fucking word vomit like Deku? Yes, Bakugo. Fucking word vomit. This doesn't make sense, Midoriya cried. There's no way a quirk of someone so young would be powerful enough to work on such a large group of people for so long, and even if it were, why was the range of this initial blast so small that if it was that powerful, the logistics alone— Shut up, nerd! It doesn't matter how it works, Mr. Aizawa said, already looking even more exhausted than he had at the beginning of class. As of right now, due to this quirk, you are not to leave campus, your phones are being confiscated, and the Wi-Fi is being shut down in your dorm. Numerous protests accompanied this announcement, and Aizawa gave them a subtle glare to quiet them. I feel like I don't need to remind you that if anything confidential were to get out due to this quirk, it would be disastrous. Most of the class paled at that, the idea of one of them spilling information that the media, or worse, the villains, could use for their own malicious intent was enough to shut them up about having no internet or phones for so long. That being said, Aizawa continued after letting that sink in for a moment, you will all probably share things with each other that you would rather keep hidden. I implore all of you to be accepting of one another's faults and words. You will all be heroes together one day, and that means you should have to trust one another. The class took in what he said solemnly. If this was what they had to do because of this quirk, then that was what they were going to do. It didn't mean they had to like it. The first few unexpected truths weren't all that much. A couple of, no, I wasn't paying attention, and yes, I did the homework in homeroom's class. They were to be expected, especially considering the work ethic of some of the students. Those caused the class to laugh, if a bit awkwardly. It reminded them that they had to watch what they were saying at all times, even if they knew deep down there was nothing they could do about it. The first interesting truth was to come out of Bakugo, though. I'm not going to bed early, I just need the time to read romance novels because I don't want anybody to know that I read them. That admission had come from a hand slapping over his mouth as the entire room stared at him, before they all burst out into laughter so loud that the dorm next to them could hear. Oh my God, Bakugo, Jiro wheezed with tears in her eyes. The entire rest of the self-proclaimed Baku squad was too busy rolling on the floor to even say anything, including the almost death threats that rapid-fired from the boy's mouth. If anything, the shout of, I will metaphorically kill you, made them laugh even harder. They refused to let it go, and for hours they asked him about all of his favorite books and what part of the gushy romance stuff he liked the best. They finally dropped it when Bakugo threatened to shave all their heads, and because of the quirk they knew he was being dead serious. Attention everyone, Mina announced from the entrance to the common room, making everyone turn her way where she was standing with Jiro, Hakakure, and Yamomo. What's up? Kirishima asked from his place at the table, where he was currently engaged in a very intense game of Uno with Kaminari and Sero, who were all finding it very hard not to shout out what cards they had in their hands. Well, the girls and I were thinking— It was totally your idea, Mina, Jiro interrupted. Well, you guys supported me and everything, so you should get credit too, since you guys are my best friends and I appreciate everything. We get it, Bakugo yelled from the kitchen. The stupid truth quirk is making you spill your guts about love and friendship. Get to the point. Mina turned pinker than normal, rubbing the back of her neck. Well, since Aizawa said we can't use the internet for a whole month and none of us have our phones anymore, we were thinking we should totally have a bunch of movie nights, Hagakure shouted excitedly. Uraraka shot up from her seat on the couch by Ida, eyes shining. That's an amazing idea. But what about the truth quirk? Kaminari said. Like, if we're all together all the time, won't it be easier to reveal stuff about ourselves? Since when did Dunce Face get a brain? But think about it, Kirishima said. We hardly ever get this time to bond with each other, but now we can since we're pretty much isolated to the dorms. I, for one, don't want to spend all my time holed up in my room. Kirishima's right, Midoriya said, seemingly deep in thought. We're all going to be heroes together someday, and that requires a deep level of trust, just like Aizawa said. If we don't trust each other enough to sit down together while anything could blurt out at any moment, we won't be very good heroes. How can civilians trust us when we can't even trust each other? He looked around and noticed everyone staring at him. Midoriya, Ida suddenly cried, launching towards him with vigor. That was truly inspiring. As a class rep, I should have said it better myself. I couldn't have said it better myself, though. All in favor of said movie night, say aye. A chorus of enthusiastic and a couple of unenthusiastic, but no one noticed, ayes rang out from the room. Ida cleared his throat and shot a pointed look towards the kitchen, where slight grumbling could be heard before Bakugo slumped out of the kitchen and fell into a chair. Aye, he said through his teeth, causing loud cheering from all the members of the Baku squad. I mean, it's a good thing Bakugo agreed to come, Jiro muttered to the girls, sniggering. I, for one, would love to hear more about his confessions from romance novels. She was louder than she meant to be, which meant Bakugo definitely heard her. What did I say about shaving your head, Ears? I mean, she has a point, Mina said, apparently ignoring whatever threat to her hair Bakugo was imposing. You really don't seem like the type to read that stuff. Well, I started liking it when I was younger, but kind of grew out of it as time went on. Oh, no, you fucking don't, you pink demon. Mina laughed, but didn't stop. Well, if you grew out of it, then why do you still read them? Because it's not like I can actually have romance with the person I want, so I chose the next best thing, he snapped, before his eyes widened, as did everyone else's in the room, and he promptly smacked a hand over his mouth. Mina's eyes turned to stars as she shot up in front of Bakugo's now scarlet face, prying his hand away. Who? Who is it? Tell us right now. The entire common room was staring at them now, and their eyes were glued to Bakugo as he slumped down in his seat, seemingly to get as far away from Mina as possible. I do not want to tell you. Everyone in the room knew how much willpower Bakugo was using right then. The effects of the quirk were extremely powerful, and to resist a direct question like that was near impossible. Please, who is it? I'll love you forever. She dragged out the last word as she slid down on the floor. Ida stood up abruptly. It is extremely unheroic of us to take advantage of shitty hair, Bakugo blurted out, yet again smacking himself in the face. He seemed to be doing that a lot lately. Nobody moved, but all eyes slowly shifted to the redhead at the table, who was growing redder by the second. Kirishima stood up slowly. Are you serious, man? Bakugo groaned. I am literally fucking incapable of not being serious right now, you dunderhead. Good, because I like you too. Bakugo shot out of his seat, nearly smacking into Mina on his way up. Wait, really? I mean, you were the one that called me a dunder... Bakugo cut him off by smacking their lips together, and if the entire common room cheered, they didn't really notice. Well, maybe something good will come of this quirk, right? Midoriya said to Shinso, sometime after the other two had gone upstairs for some romance reading. Well, I would hope, Todoroki said blankly from across the room, hardly looking up from his book, because I like you as well. The green-haired boy choked. Wait, what? So, Kirishima said from his place on Bakugo's bed, unable to stop the grin from forming on his face. You really like me back? Said boy huffed from his desk chair. He was sitting on it backwards with his chin and arms resting on the back. It made him look quieter than normal. I mean, yeah. Kirishima's insides turned even gooier than before. He couldn't help but blurt the words out. I think I've liked you since I first saw you. You were always so strong, and I really admired that, you know? Bakugo looked uncomfortable. It wasn't like that for me. When I got to UA, everybody was just an obstacle for me. I saw this place as a tool, and I didn't care who I had to hurt to get my way. But then you tore down my stupid walls and made me actually care about someone for once. I think I realized I loved you when you reached your hand out to save me. Bakugo looked up at the end of his mini rant before turning pink. I mean, you love me? Yes. Kirishima realized his eyesight was turning misty as he stood and placed his hands on Katsuki's. Good, because I love you too. Okay, don't freak out, Izuku told himself as he stared across the room at Todoroki. Your crush just confessed to you under the effects of a truth quirk? Yeah, it's totally fine. Todoroki, he said, voice slightly shaking. What? I'm going to give you guys some privacy, Shinso said from next to him, and Izuku saw a trace of a smirk as he stood, and then he realized they were the only ones left in the common room. Before he knew it, the elevator doors were sliding shut, and it was just the two of them sitting alone in the almost dark room. Yeah, don't freak out. Midoriya, is it okay if I come sit next to you? Of course it is, Izuku replied before he even had a chance to think. This quirk really was something. He already had several pages in his notes dedicated to it. How it seemed to know the truth before you even had a chance to think of any lies. Todoroki sat by him, and his weight made the couch dip down slightly, so Izuku was almost leaning on him, which totally did nothing for his don't freak out mentality. Izuku took a chance and glanced up at the other boy and found himself staring right into his eyes. And as red as he knew his face was, he couldn't seem to look away. I'm sorry, Todoroki said. I didn't mean to say that so abruptly. It's just, with this whole quirk thing. I get it, Izuku said as he looked down again. I've said weird things too. Earlier today I told Sue about my underwear being All Might themed, totally unprompted. And I just told you, totally unprompted. Izuku wanted to die of embarrassment, but he heard, more so felt, Todoroki chuckle next to him. Very on brand for you, I must say. Izuku chuckled too, before falling into silence, and oh boy, was that hard right now, and then tried to speak again, very carefully. Todoroki, Shoto. Izuku blanched. What? The dual-haired boy looked a bit shocked even at his own words, but nevertheless spoke on. Call me Shoto. I think we're close enough for that. Now he knew his face was definitely red, but his mouth somehow opened on its own. In that case, call me Izuku. Was Shoto red now too? All right, Izuku. Oh man, this was going to end badly. He just knew it. But wait, Todoroki had already said he liked him. So you do like me back? The words spilled from his mouth before he could stop them. That was getting very annoying very fast. I already said, wait. Shoto lifted to look at him better in the eyes, his eyes widening in apparent shock. Back? He looked up at him, into his two-toned eyes, thinking about that moment in the sports festival where he lit up and it was beautiful, but that somehow the dark common room made him look even more so, and said, yeah, back. There was a moment where neither boy said anything, before Shoto laughed, really laughed, and man, if that sound wasn't the most precious thing that Izuku had ever heard, and no, there definitely weren't tears in their eyes. I guess you were right, Shoto said as he put a hand on Izuku's cheek, and he suddenly became aware of how widely they were both smiling. Something good might come from this quirk after all. Izuku was on his way to homeroom, hand in hand with his new boyfriend, which was incredible in its own right. Breakfast had been a fun affair with the announcing of the second new relationship of the first 2 days under a truth quirk, when All Might in his now permanently smaller form came around the corner. Young Midoriya, he said with a wave, before catching sight of him holding hands with the dual-haired boy. I see the truth quirk had done some good, huh? Izuku immediately turned red, flailing his arms around in an attempt to mask how flustered he was. He had to guess it probably wasn't working. Hey, All Might, he said, a voice a little too high. The hero in question simply chuckled. Is it okay if we talk for a moment? Aizawa has already excused you from homeroom. It took all of Izuku's willpower to simply say, sure thing, and not the thousands of thoughts and concerns that immediately flew through his mind. He could only think of a handful of things All Might would want to talk about with him, since he was under the influence of this stupid quirk, and none of them should be shared with the people he was currently with. He turned to Shoto, and gave him a quick kiss on the cheek, and then told him he'd see him in a bit. I really like it when you display your affection for me, Shoto said before turning bright pink. I'll be sure to do it more then, Izuku said automatically, also turning pink, before following All Might to the teacher's lounge. I guess this is about one for all, and how it would be disastrous if I were to spill any information about it, Izuku said as he sat down on the couch across from his mentor. Also, that tie definitely does not match your outfit at all. All Might coughed harshly into his hand, clearly startled by Izuku's bluntness. Man, they really weren't kidding about this quirk, were they? Izuku felt like a deer caught in headlights. I'm so sorry, I did not mean to say that out loud. All Might simply chuckled. It's quite all right, my boy. But yes, that is precisely what I want to discuss with you. Izuku sat back in his chair, thinking for a moment, and if anything about One for All were to get out, it certainly wouldn't be good. But he did trust his classmates to not say anything about it to the media or anything, that was for sure. Would it really be that big of a deal if something were to slip out unintentionally? Oh, but if Aizawa found out, he was dead for sure. Now, I wouldn't say that, All Might said. Aizawa would certainly kill me before he even had the chance to look at you. Oh, had he said that all out loud? Yes, you did, his mentor said, looking far too amused. Sorry, Izuku said, rubbing the back of his neck. I'm bad without a quirk forcing my mouth open all the time as it is. You have nothing to apologize for, he said with a fond smile, before growing serious again. I believe you are right, however. Any information getting released to the public due to this quirk would be disastrous. But I think you're also right in the faith you have placed in your classmates. I don't doubt every one of them will make wonderful heroes one day, and each of them has earned your trust. Izuku let out a breath he didn't know he was holding, but he was still hesitant. But what about your secret? Are you sure you would be okay with them knowing you weren't born a hero? All Might shrugged, and his eyes were somewhat distant as he spoke. It's not my secret to tell anymore, my boy. You are the sole holder of One for All. Now, that being said, I wouldn't say anything unless you can help it due to your quirk, but I doubt this is something you would want to get out if this quirk had never happened. Izuku nodded, suddenly feeling a lot smaller, and the words poured out of his mouth before he had a chance to stop them. I'm also worried that they'll find out I used to be quirkless if the matter of One for All comes up. Most people were less than kind to me when they found out about my status back then. That was close enough to the truth, right? After all, he said it without any problems. He never did tell his mentor the extent of the bullying, and he never really wanted to start now. But even though he was very much going through and around the truth with what he just said, All Might's eyes seemed to soften, as if he knew all the turmoil that Izuku had gone through in his past. I don't believe you have to worry about that with this group, but I understand your concern. Try to steer conversations that would reveal anything. Oh, of course, Izuku said. It's not like I'm going to just walk into class and say All Might gave me his quirk, right? Midoriya, Ida said as Izuku walked into class at the end of the homeroom. How was your talk with All Might? Oh, it was good, Izuku said with a smile, and we talked about the quirk he gave me. Well, so much for that. This concludes Chapter 1 of If We're Being Honest. Such a good fic. A lot of humor, but, there's a lot of really great emotional parts and aspects to it as well. Let me know your guys' thoughts and reactions below, and I will pick up with the second chapter of this as soon as possible. Thanks, as always, for listening.